All right, welcome to Powerhouse Conversations, the podcast that brings you the ultimate playbook for winning both on and off the field. And we are at the crossroads of sports, business, and technology. I'm your host, Fred. And today we have a special guest, Alex Turner from Apex Athlete Management.
Going on, Fred? I appreciate you having me on, man.
Definitely. I definitely want to dive into, everything that you're doing at Apex and just give people who you are and a quick introduction to
Yeah, most definitely. So, like he said, I'm Alexander Turner, the founder and creator of Apex Athlete Management. We are a leading Black-owned NIL agency servicing mainly collegiate athletes, but we do have one pro and one Olympian on our roster. And basically, I started the Apex really just because I saw a disparity between like financial literacy being taught to the college athletes when NIL first started. And throughout learning how to pretty much educate them on that, I also pretty much learned that the biggest thing that they really needed before the financial literacy as well was brand building. So I pretty much started the agency to pretty much help collegiate and pro athletes with brand strategy, financial literacy, and pretty much just kind of, helping them get more media opportunities to build their brand.
definitely. So let's just talk about brand awareness in today's digital age, right?
Mhm.
So it's more crucial than ever, right? But how do you coach your athletes to build a personal brand that resonates with larger brands?
So the biggest thing, or at least the foundational piece that I always like to educate my athletes on is figure out who you are, figure out the type of brand you want to build. And when I say brand, I don't just mean like, what are you going to show people on social media, right? Like a brand is, in my mind, is not just a social media thing. So I just pretty much tell them, okay, figure out who you are, what kind of brand you want to build, how are you going to pretty much, service your audience or your clientele. And then from there, you go into what I call is crafting your ideal avatar, right? Ideal avatar is pretty much your quote unquote perfect client, your perfect viewer, whatever you want to call it. Because then from there, once you figure out what you want to do, once you figure out who exactly you're going to be talking to and targeting, your messaging and your branding and all the content you then make from there becomes much more simple.
Definitely love it. So talk to me a little bit about how technology plays a role in that. And can you give an example of some of the things that your athletes' digital presence has done to increase their brand value?
Yeah, most certainly. So to answer the first part of the question, as far as like how tech comes into that, obviously tech is pretty much in everything we do nowadays. So pretty much just having my athletes understand, and this is kind of what we talked about earlier, just all of the AIs and different softwares and hardwares out there that are pretty much making branding and business so much easier. So just educating them on, like you said, Chat GBT, educating them on like the capabilities of what that can do. I have like an entire like AI sheet of like over 100 AIs that I also kind of give some of those to my athletes depending on like what they're looking for. And the second part of the question was how, say the second part of the question for me.
Yeah. Give us some example of how their digital presence has increased their brand value.
Gotcha. So honestly, when it comes to the digital presence, for one, it helps them build a better community both in their hometown and if they happen to be playing at a school that is not their hometown, it helps them build a better community in both of those places, which in return then has more people wanting to support them, more people wanting to like buy or get whatever products they have. And when that happens, it obviously brings up, engagement rates, it brings up analytics. And from there, it really just kind of helps them because when I'm negotiating for brand deals on their behalf now, because they have started using certain softwares and technology to kind of help them boost their brand because they've started giving back to the community and interacting with the community. Now they're able to kind of negotiate better deals. I'm able to negotiate better deals on their behalf.
Yeah, love it. Let's talk about a little bit about the financial literacy portion, right? So, managing money is obviously a critical skill that anybody needs, right?
Mhm.
But for college athletes that are starting to earn NIL money, tell me a little bit about why it's important, how you, talk to your athletes about it.
Well, the first thing is, like I told you earlier, you're doing 100% of what you can do with 100% of the information you have, right? So most athletes don't know that most people or most athletes are used to if they are getting the check, taxes are already taken out. when you're working as like, because technically you are a business now, whether you like it or not, right? You're some kind of consultant or liaison or whatever the case, whatever term you want to use. But as being that, right, taxes aren't taken out of your money before, right? So that's one of the biggest things is you have to understand that all the money you get is in your money. It's just that simple. Uncle Sam's is going to come take his percentage. And depending on what state you're in, it depends on the percentage. But even from there, just having the athletes understand that you can still do things to not only legally negate some of the taxes that you owe, but also do things to make sure that you're growing your wealth and then building your wealth, right? So whether that is, and it also depends on the level that you're on as far as like, your brand. I don't mean like, the level of your sport, but like some athletes will start incorporating nonprofits or foundations and even trust into their business and their brand, just because depending on the nonprofit or foundation, whether you're partnering with one or whether you're starting one of your own, it can obviously offer tax advantages or tax benefits. And then even just the trust aspect, depending on how you're able to formulate your trust or how you're able to formulate, your LLC or S Corp, C Corp, whatever that may be, it also has other tax advantages, and you're able to kind of, do a little bit more with your brand from a business standpoint.
Makes sense. That makes sense. What are some of the common things that you've seen athletes run across from a financial perspective? Like, is it forgetting to pay their taxes, or is it not negotiating, certain things from a financial standpoint? What do you see?
Let me think about that for a sec. I feel like one of the biggest things that athletes have a hard time with is, it's a good one. Taxes is one of them, but I don't want to say like the most cliche answer that everybody else says. So
Yeah.
obviously taxes, but I would also say being able to grow the money more so, right? Like it's like social media and NIL has made it so easy to get money if you are looking in the right place or you know how to do certain things properly. But the biggest thing is like growing that money from there, right? Because people are getting, like, the athletes are getting the money and then spending it, right? Which is their money; they can do whatever they want with it. But at some point in time, you're gonna run out if you only are spending money and not doing things to have it grow. So I feel like the biggest thing is really just not knowing how to grow it in the way that's best for them and their brand, because social media is so oversaturated with pick me type businesses, right? Where it's like, oh, no, pick me and I'll teach you how to do this, or no, pick me and I'll show you how to multiply this. And a lot of it is oversaturated in the sense that those people either have never done it. Some of those people have either never done it or they did it once and then think they're a guru at it, right? So it's just finding the right opportunities and the right people to listen to and finding how to grow their money rather than just deplete it.
You brought up a really, really great point. It made me think about, like, I'm always trying to give out some game from a technology standpoint of how I can be more efficient, but like learning some of those things, like you said, growing the money, keeping the money, saving the money, all of that. Like literally, the athlete can go into ChatGPT. Hey, I'm projected to make, I don't know, $100,000 this year. Come up with a plan of how I can save my money each. Just come up, the prompt to be, come up with a plan of how I can create a financial strategy. How can I save my money? How can I invest my money? And how can I grow it? And it's going to spit out something that's going to tell you all of those things. And then you go right back in and you iterate it. And okay, well, hey, it's going to tell you that, hey, I would like to, and then you can talk about some of the things that you, some of the goals that you, hey, I want to learn more about things. What are some good stocks that I can invest in? Hey, I want to put my money into a CD. What are for CDs, right? Or what is the best tax strategy to use? How much money do I need to be putting away each month? I probably use ChatGPT more than I use Google at this point in 2024. So those are the things so those are some of the things that you can use, because if you think about it, Google's just pulling information from articles, and now you have to read the article, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what to take. The difference is that you're going to be able, it's going to break it down in a way that you know what, okay, the chat pulled this from the same places that Google's pulling it from, but actually it's going to iterated in a way that's going to be easier for you to understand. And if it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
then you can ask it to explain it to you in a way that you understand. So no,
Exactly.
I think that's great. I wanted to go a little bit more into the NIL and the growth strategy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
tell me a little bit about where you see the NIL landscape right now, and then where do you see it?
So right now, and I'm sure everybody's heard this before, it's still the Wild Wild West in a sense, but it's cleaning up a lot. And what I mean when I say that is obviously with the NCAA ruling that, was passed in Supreme Court, still hasn't been officially signed yet. But it's shaping it to where even now, really, there's a large revenue share that's going to be happening, right? So I see that being a bigger factor, maybe even a higher percentage of the revenue share, depending on obviously, how much revenue is being generated for these schools. But within that, I see the college space starting to look a little bit more like the pro space. Now, not in the sense of, let me go sign with this school slash team, right, for X amount of years, but more so in the sense of, like we were talking about earlier, the transfer portal, right? That's pretty much like the trade, like getting traded, but you get to choose where you want to go, right?
Right.
Obviously, you're getting paid directly from, the school slash institution. So I see it being more business model. I see a lot more money being pumped into it just because now that you've opened the door for athletes to make money, there are going to be a lot more people who want to pay them money. So it's just even a bigger opportunity, I feel like, for college athletes to really start getting paid. And within that, I hope to see schools start taking a larger role on the financial education for their athletes. Obviously, they're going to take a bigger role in just NIL compliance because as an institution, they want to make sure that their asses are covered, honestly.
Yeah.
So I just want to see them start incorporating more financial institution or financial education on the base level,
Mhm.
just because it'll help when, third parties like us are now able to kind of give them that more advanced knowledge rather than trying to teach them both the basic and the advanced in whatever small time frame that they have.
Right. That makes sense because if you're going to be taking more control of that revenue model, and you're going to be pushing out more of the funds, then you have to be able to invest back into the athletes
Mm-hmm.
in different ways, right? And that is honestly an opportunity for people like us, right? We
Exactly.
have to be able to invest into the athlete, and everything's not going to be in-house, especially for schools that don't have large staffs. And schools that don't have large staff have to invest in their athletes. And one way to invest in them is to go third party and people who are knowledgeable in their field
Mm-hmm.
and are able to educate the athletes. And that's not always going to be in-house.
Exactly. And it's comes to, like you said, finding those third party people, having them kind of host those workshops. The more difficult thing for the schools, I feel like, would be is filtering between all of those third party peoples, right? Because
Yes.
they're like I said, there's a lot of people on social media who are fluff, but like visually and like eye test wise, and even if you do a minor bit of research, they still kind of, the research might hold up and make it seem as if they know more than they actually do until they actually get in front of the people and then they're asked certain questions or put in certain positions where, they're not able to really give the valuable information that is needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's big. That's one thing that I have been very big in because I'm only going to speak on what I know. I'm not going to speak too much about the actual NIL deal side of it. I could speak on this from the standpoint of I've been in tech sales working with small businesses for over a decade, and I know
Mm-hmm.
how small businesses think. I know what they're doing, and I know what they're looking for. And I've worked worked with branding with some of the largest businesses in the company. I mean in the world. But that's you have to be able to sift through all of the fluff and understand, who's actually knows what they're talking about, who's actually done what they're talking about, and who knows, where what to do with these athletes' future.
Facts. I couldn't have said it better myself, honestly.
And so I know you talked a little bit about the new rules that are coming into place. How do you help your athletes balance those business ventures as well as the demands of their athletics?
So I always tell my athletes that like your school and your sport comes first, period. Because like this is a passion that you have. You didn't go to college to play sports just because you just wanted a scholarship, or because half of the athletes I have, they were still in school before NIL was even legal, right? This NIL hasn't even been in place for a full like college cycle. When I say college cycle, like somebody goes into college as a freshman and they graduate
Right.
for in the regular 4 years, right? So like it hasn't even been here for a full college cycle. So I tell them, focus on what got you to college to begin with, right? Your academic and physical prowess, right? Then from there, I'll make sure that you're getting paid, right? Like if you're doing everything you need to do with your school and your sport, for one, it creates discipline, right? Because now I unfortunately never had the opportunity to play college sports, but I know a lot of people who did, and the schedule is rigorous as hell, right? Like they work you both in class and in your sport, right? So if you're able to then really gain that or master that schedule, master that discipline, everything else becomes easier because now you're already in the mindset of, there are going to be some things in NIL that you don't want to do but are necessary, right? And it's the same thing with school and your sport, right? Once you get that discipline and you understand that, everything else, especially in the business side, comes easier because now when it comes to the business side, I can give analogies of, hey, just like how you had to do X, Y, and Z in class or X, Y, and Z in practice or in the game, the same thing comes here. It's just business now, right? It's you're not using your physical prowess to pretty much get what you want. You have to use certain mental prowesses that you might not have been able to exercise as much. So I let them know to start off there, and then from there, like everything else comes a little bit easier, and I can always just educate and guide them from there on anything that they don't know.
Love it. Love it. So what have you seen in NIL has you kind of excited? What are some of the things that you've seen that has you excited for the future?
Honestly, the settlement. The settlement has me really excited just because it's like a two-part, right? For one, I'm always for athletes getting paid more money, right? Especially on the college level, just because they've been taken advantage of for so long. But it also opens the door for a lot of the third-party services that help athletes to be able to get a little bit more money for them as well, right? And I'm not sitting here preaching that, we need to be taking their money for real, because we shouldn't, right? But as far as certain services that, you know, some of the third parties otherwise give out for free because they know they're dealing with collegiate athletes and, still technically college students, right? They're able to actually still be able to give those services. But in my opinion, those services are now going to be given at a higher level, because even if you just say have a subscription model, right? And you have a couple athletes being able to pay you $10, $20 a month. If you have 100 athletes paying you $20 a month, that's an extra $2,000 that you're able to use for your business to then make your business better and then make the services that you provide for those athletes even more. So I'm definitely excited just about the settlement, because it's just going to clear up a lot of things and open up a lot more doors for everybody involved.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because, like I said, the more and more these athletes get more savvy, the more you can go and this is just literally a business conversation, right? The more you can go B to C versus only doing B2B, because right now my business model is B2B, right? I'm going to the universities and I have services that I offer, and now we're looking to partner based on that. But B2C, business to consumer, and well, just to give clarification, business to business, and then business to consumer. Consumer would be the athlete. And now you can spread a wider net. They have the funds to be able to utilize your services when they see the value in your services. So if you are a third party, now you have the ability to offer service and offer value based on that. And so that's
Yeah.
big.
And I also feel like, and you kind of just gave me this idea, I feel like it also offers more opportunities for the hold on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, my bad, camera went out. So, but I also feel like it offers more opportunities for the B2B, the business to business, because now schools are going to be taking more of a serious role in making sure that their athletes are successful in NIL. And like I said, hopefully successful in that financial literacy acumen as well, which then
Yep.
means, like we said earlier, we're going to be bringing in more third-party people who need to educate these athletes, and then you find the right third-party people. And if obviously you have a good reputation about yourself, like, you go in there, you're able to help, one major school who then they start telling everybody else. Now, boom, you went from not only just helping B2C, but now you're helping both B2B and B2C. So now you're able to then even more build out whatever that third party service is and make sure that it's even more pristine and more polished and at a higher level for these athletes who, like I said, still need to know this information.
Yep. And I think what comes up, and I know we had a good conversation about this earlier, is just value, right? And that's on every end for everybody, right? You have the third party, businesses, the athlete management groups, and then you have the athletes, the student athletes, and then you have the athletic departments, right? And everyone needs to be giving out value so everyone can work together to put in the best ecosystem that you can have for these athletes. The athletes need to be putting out value for the businesses and the brands that they're going to be working with in NIL. The athletic departments need to be putting value back into the student athletes and to obviously the brands as well. But they need to put out value for them to be able to be the best version of themselves. And then obviously the brands have to be able to recognize that value in each of these different entities, and then that's how NIL continues to grow to the 1.6 billion that is projected to grow to.
Exactly. And I feel like it also just, provides more guidelines for the entire NIL process, right? Like I said, NIL has been the wild, wild west since it began.
Yep.
And once you start incorporating a lot more of these things, it's now there's going to be more of a universal rule or policy that people are going to be able to know rather than, oh, okay, like we were talking about the transfer portal earlier. I might be in a school in Georgia, but now I transfer to a school in California and the NIL rulings are completely different, right? Taxes are different, right? The way they do business in some aspects are different, right? So it'll start creating a more uniform type of, way to do things, and it'll also help everybody involved. So I really am excited to see what comes out of that.
Talk to me a little bit about the Athletes Wisdom podcast. You share insights, strategies with athlete. What's some of the most impactful lessons that you feel have come out of the show?
Yeah, so I started Athletes Wisdom podcast initially started as a sports talk with Turner podcast, which is supposed to be just kind of like a sports commentary, but like that market was oversaturated, and then NIL came into play, and it just kind of had me pivot to educating athletes about branding and financial literacy. So I'd say one of the most impactful guests I had on the podcast, her name was Jennifer Paulino. Essentially, she just really went into deep dive on the benefits of nonprofits for athletes and how they could either start one of their own, partner with it, how it's beneficial in the NIL space, how it opens up the opportunity for you to pretty much get more money than you might have already been getting, while still being able to actually have a large impact in the community. Just because that's also something I continuously like to preach to my athletes is within that brand strategy that we build, like a part of that is the community outreach and the community impact that athlete is going to have, whether on their school community or their hometown community, right? So besides her, there was another athlete that I had on. There was an athlete that I had on. Her name was Gabrielle or Gabby Anderson, Harvard basketball player. She was literally able to pay off her school tuition with NIL deals, and she goes to Harvard. All right, this is one of the most expensive schools in the world, expensive Ivy Leagues out there. So just being able to like hear her journey of how she was able to take her creative, skill sets and partner with companies like Walmart and all these other big companies. I want to say maybe Target. I might be mistaken on that, but I know she partnered with Walmart and a few other big companies and was able to really just give back to the community while also being able to pay her school tuition off while doing so. So I feel like those are probably the biggest two. I could obviously pull more out, but those are the ones that come to mind as of right now.
Yeah. Talk to me just a little bit about, has anybody talked about like just the digital landscape or just innovation in general?
Yes, I can't think of who it is at the moment, but I know I've had somebody on just like talking about the digital impact and like how that's changing, but it definitely needs to be spoken about more. I will say that.
For sure, for sure. And that's definitely something that we want to make sure that we're highlighting, because I think that with everything that's coming in the future,
Hmm.
I know it's kind of like going hand in hand, right? NIL's growing, the tech space is growing,
Hmm.
and I think that they're going to go side by side. And I think it's beneficial for the athletes to be able to understand, because they know, like, in my opinion, they know everything and more about technology. It's just about how to put
Make
it in the
money.
right place and make the right decisions and how to use it, and capitalize on it, where they are right now.
And I feel like social media is also, well, just technology in general, but like obviously one of the largest ways athletes make money in NIL is off social media. Social media is changing all the time,
Yeah.
right? So like whether it's a small adjustment or a big adjustment, it's always changing. So it's like also being able to keep up with those trends. And
Yep.
it's changing, in my opinion, for the better
Yep.
for the most part, just because like they're making it to where they're giving the creators more opportunities to be
Yep.
able to generate revenue from it, right? It's obviously still a self-serving thing for the brand, because the more you have people on your platform and the more content they post, obviously the more data and money you're able to get as a company, but it's still giving that opportunity to the athlete. So I feel like there definitely needs to be some kind of like conference or workshop or something that's geared towards collegiate athletes, like a big one that's geared towards collegiate athletes, where they literally go into actionable steps on how to monetize build their brand, how to monetize their brand, how to collaborate, right? Like, because not a lot of talk is not a lot of conversation is around the collaboration aspect, just because if there is anything that I've seen that's helped build somebody's brand besides posting consistently, it's collaborating with people. And it doesn't necessarily mean you got to collaborate with the biggest people, right? Or only the smallest people, but collaborating in general has been one of the ways I've seen some athletes grow brands like crazy overnight.
Yeah, man. Just think about the streaming, right? Just think
Hmm.
about how big streaming is becoming, and all the kids are doing it. It's really about just figuring out how you can leverage streaming and going and building your brand and finding something that is going to resonate with the NIL opportunity that you want. Right?
Hmm.
Get on there, stream, you play your game, or you just stream and talk. Like, I've seen people who play instruments, and they play they get on there and play their guitar or something. It doesn't matter what it is, and I think we talked about this a little bit, but it's about being authentic to yourself. And I think giving people a piece of who you are, and you'll find out that more and more people, you attract more and more people with who you are versus like who you're trying to become.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought streaming up, just because streaming is a whole different beast in itself. Like, that's another way for athletes, obviously anybody besides just athlete, but for athletes to really like build the community aspect. Because I'm gonna take probably the biggest streamer in the world right now, Kai Cenat, right? Or Cenat. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his
I get
name properly. But he literally has the most loyal streaming community out there. Why? Because he's, for one, unapologetically him. For one, he's a genius in streaming as well, right? Like, or I guess for two, he's a genius in streaming. Like, as far as like he's set so many streaming trends that have like revolutionized the streaming world. It's crazy. Like, streaming for 24 hours straight, or streaming for like 7 days straight. And like, nobody does that because most people are afraid to show who they really are, right? So, but streaming just really offers that opportunity for you to be real with your audience, for you to, show people who you really are unapologetically, and just have them either rock with you or not rock with you, right? But it also shows that people have longer attention span than social media has portrayed. Obviously, people have a very short attention span with, TikTok and social media and the reels and instant gratification. But
Yep.
streaming also shows that there still are people who really just want to get to know the person on a longevity basis and build that relationship with that person, even if it's just on a virtual and digital space.
Yeah, long form content there's still a space for it, right? There's still some opportunity if you are being authentically yourself, because like you said, you can't fake it for too long. If you're on this stream, you're on this live, like that's gonna be way too hard to be able to put on a show consistently and just like be kind of. I think where Kai is able to be successful is he's kind of vulnerable, and those instances that show like, okay, he's human, right? Like like with these streamers, you see them crash out, you see them, you see them up, you see them down, you see them happy, whatever. But I think a lot of it comes down to just being able to authentically show up as yourself.
Exactly, exactly. And that goes into just brand building in general. Like, that's what I always tell my athletes. Like, one of the questions you asked earlier, like when I said just start with, being a student and being an athlete, it really just starts with being you first, right? Because then
Yep.
if you show up authentically, obviously there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like you, whether you show up as your real self or your fake self, right? So why not show up as your real self and have people just really rock with you for who you are? And then it kind of limits the crashing out. Obviously, you can still crash out regardless, being yourself
Yeah.
or being
Yeah.
fake, right? But like it limits it because now you feel as if you don't have to keep putting on like a persona that isn't
Right.
actually you. And you're
Right.
able to just genuinely create content and just be who you are freely.
Yep. No, I agree. I agree. But as we wrap up, like I want to know a little bit more about the future of Apex and kind of just tell me a little bit about like, what brands are you looking forward to working with, what athletes, like tell me a little bit about what's next.
Yeah, so I would say the future of Apex really starts with making sure that all the athletes now, I'm able to pretty much make sure they're successful even after they're done with college, right? Simply because, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. It's an emergency. Apologies. Somebody had texted me something that was extremely time sensitive. Would you mind asking the question again?
Yeah, I wanted to understand a little bit about where Apex is going and like what are you looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, so honestly, like I said, Apex, where I see it going, it really starts off with making sure that the athletes that I have on the roster now are successful both now and later. Whenever I give my word to somebody, I've always been taught to keep your word, right? And I gave my word to these athletes that I'm going to make sure that they're successful both right now and as far as the NIL deals, but also putting them in a position to succeed once they're done with their playing career or once they're done with college, right? Because some of my athletes are going to go pro, right? Some of them want to go pro. So I see Apex Athlete Management really just being, for one, the leading NIL agency in college, but not leading in the sense that we have the most athletes or the biggest athletes. Leading in the sense of all of our athletes who come to the agency are successful pretty much throughout their entire professional and personal career, right? We've set them up to where they have all the necessary and right financial acumen to know how to manage their money properly. They know how to make sure to budget or to build their business or how to grow and expand their business. Where do I see it in the extreme distant future? I will eventually get into the high school space as well. I know we're already going to go into the pro space just because we kind of already are. But like I said, being the leading NIL collegiate agency and just being the most specialized boutique agency when it comes to the high school and pro level, in the sense of still pretty much offering those same, services to our athletes, but just at a higher level while still pretty much giving them access to each other and each other's like non monetary resources, right? Now, when I say that, I mean like with some of the best, just like how Kai Sanat has built a strong community and the people in the community interact with each other, I want to have essentially that same community aspect with the athletes, right? So it's not just I sign with Apex, yeah, I got a little money and a little financial acumen. I'm good with myself, but you're still building the community with the other athletes who are still building in that same way. So pretty much just kind of starting that, family in a sense that no matter where they are, what point in time, they still have those resources and those connections to be able to pretty much build and do whatever they want.
Love it, love it. I want to close out with just giving some advice to the student athletes on dreaming big, and what practical advice did you give?
Write down the biggest, and I'm talking about the biggest and best goal that you have for yourself in your life, right? I'm talking about dream literally as big as you possibly can. Write it down on paper, right? Because it's different thinking it and even having it memorized rather than writing it down on paper, because then your brain memorizes it in a certain way when it's written down. Write that down, and then I want you to 10x it, right? And the reason why I say 10x it, and this is like a Grant Cardone thing, right? And I had this mindset even before then, but you 10x your biggest goal because 99.99% of the time we shortchange ourselves anyway. So our biggest goal isn't what we're actually capable of. It's what we think are capable of if we do our most. But the reason why you want to 10x it is because even if you quote unquote fall short, so let's just say your biggest goal as a professional athlete is, let's just put a monetary like dollar amount just because it's easier to quantify, right? Obviously athletes have more higher goals than just a money amount, but let's just say your biggest goal as an athlete, college or pro, is to make it to the pros and make $100 million, right? Let's just say that's best case scenario that you could dream with for your life. Next that, right? Now you want to make $1 billion, right? And the reason why I say that is if you only set your goal at the highest you think you can do, sometimes we fail, right? But when we fail, sometimes we let that define us. If you fail and your goal was 100 million and you only reach 20 million, right? For one, that's still a good place to be in, but you still might think, oh, wow, I wasn't able to get to where I wanted to go. But if you 10x that goal and you put it to $1 billion and now you're only able to get 400 million, you still went further than what you initially thought you were capable of. So write whatever your biggest and best goal is, right? And like I said, it doesn't have to be monetary. Write that down and then 10x it, because now you're going to start doing the work that then requires that 10x goal.
Definitely love it, love it. Basically, is you're not dreaming big enough, right? You're not dreaming big
Exactly.
enough. Dream big, dream bigger.
Exactly.
Definitely love that. But Alex, as we close, it's been a great conversation. The expertise and guiding athletes through brand building, financial literacy, and we did a little bit of leveraging technology. That's been incredibly valuable. So we definitely want to champion that. On Dream Big Sports, we share the commitment to helping athletes not only succeed in their sport, but off the field and beyond their game, right?
Mhm.
For our listeners, I want y'all to make sure y'all follow Alex and check out the Athletes Wisdom podcast for more tips and strategy on brand building and building a successful career. We want to make sure that we're bringing you strategies here at Powerhouse Conversations, having these great conversations that are going to push you to be the best version of yourself that you could be. So make sure you follow them, follow us at Dream Big Fred. Like and subscribe Powerhouse Conversations on YouTube. This will be available on all streaming platforms. Until next time, we'll see you later.